Chapter 17. The Weight of the Crownless. The mountain did not sleep after Lycaon vanished. It watched. Daniel Mercer felt it in the hours that followed. The way the air pressed heavier against his lungs. The way every sound echoed just a fraction too long, as if stone itself were listening. The chasm at Obsidian Pass had sealed. The runes dimmed, but the earth beneath their feet thrummed with restrained power. Something ancient had shifted position in the world, and reality was still adjusting. They did not celebrate survival. They regrouped. The council gathered before dawn in a cavern carved by centuries of wind and water, its ceiling lost in shadow. Firelight flickered against stone walls etched with symbols older than any language Mercer knew. Wolves stood along the perimeter, some in human form, some unable to fully shift back yet, eyes glowing faintly. Vampires occupied the far side, their stillness predatory, watchful. Humans, wardens, stood between them, weapons lowered but hands never far from grips. Rashad stood at the center. The werewolf king looked older now, not weakened but burdened. "We are at a crossroads," Rashad said, his voice carrying without effort. Lycaon has returned, not as legend, not as myth, as fact. A low murmur rippled through the wolves. "He claims dominion," Rashad continued, "over all of us." Tarek snarled openly. "Let him try." Several wolves echoed the sentiment, but not all. Mercer noticed some averting their gaze, jaws tight, bodies tense as if resisting an invisible pull. Elena Vasquez stepped forward, her presence commanding immediate silence. "This is not a challenge we can brute force," she said calmly. "Lycaon is not merely powerful. He is foundational. The very concept of werewolf hierarchy bends toward him." Rashad nodded grimly. "My authority exists because his absence allowed it." Mercer shifted uncomfortably. "So what happens if wolves just answer the call?" Elena's eyes met his. "Then Rashad ceases to be king, and the packs fracture or consolidate under Lycaon," Crow added. "Either way, balance collapses." Crow looked worse in the firelight, pale, exhausted, the weight of what he'd witnessed pressing visibly on him. "The wardens have records," he continued, "fragmented ones. Every time Lycaon stirred in the past, civilizations fell. Not always violently, but inevitably." Nida crossed her arms. "So we bow." Crow shook his head. "No, we stall." Rashad's gaze hardened. "The ultimatum gives us one full moon." "1 month," Mercer said quietly. Elena's expression turned calculating. "Time enough to plan, not enough to make mistakes." All eyes slowly turned toward Mercer. He felt it like a physical pressure. "What?" he asked. Elena spoke first. "Lycaon singled you out." Crow nodded. "He resisted the compulsion." Rashad added, "No werewolf should have been able to stand in his presence." Mercer clenched his fists. "I didn't stand. I fought it." "That may be more dangerous," Elena said softly. Silence settled again. Rashad finally said what none of them wanted to voice. "You are the variable." Mercer left the cavern before the weight crushed him. He moved into the forest, boots crunching softly over frost and pine needles, breath fogging in the early morning air. The wolf paced inside him, restless and unsettled, torn between instinctive submission and raw defiance. "King," the wolf whispered. "No," Mercer muttered under his breath. "Not mine." He stopped near a ridge overlooking the valley. Smoke still rose faintly from where the battlefield had been. Scars on the land would fade, but some wounds ran deeper. "You can't outrun it." Mercer turned. Elena stood a few feet away, her movements soundless, cloak drawn tight against the cold. "I wasn't trying to," Mercer said. She studied him with unsettling intensity. "Lycaon didn't threaten you." "He didn't need to." Elena nodded. "He sees potential leverage. Or succession." Mercer stiffened. "I don't want a crown." "No one worthy ever does," Elena replied. Mercer laughed bitterly. "I was a cop 6 months ago, and now you're something unprecedented," Elena said. "A bridge he cannot fully command." Mercer met her gaze. "You sound like you want to use me." Elena didn't deny it. "I sound like someone who wants to survive." She stepped closer. Lycaon's plan isn't just domination. It's control of Morvith-Kell. Mercer frowned. The Blood King. Yes, Morvith-Kell answers only to lineage. Blood and Fang united. Mercer felt cold spread through his chest. Half vampire, half werewolf. Elena nodded slowly. Lycaon was the first, but not the last attempt. Understanding struck Mercer like a blow. You think Lycaon sees me as a contingency? Elena's eyes darkened. I think Lycaon sees you as an alternative. Far beneath the mountain, Lycaon moved through darkness like a god descending into memory. The chamber below Obsidian Pass was vast, an underground cathedral carved by hands that no longer existed. Pillars etched with glowing runes rose from a lake of still, black water. At its center, suspended by ancient chains that pulsed faintly red, hung Morvith-Kell. The Blood King slept, barely. His form was colossal. Humanoid yet monstrous, skin pale as moonbone, veins glowing faintly beneath translucent flesh. His mouth was filled with layered fangs, his chest rising and falling once every few minutes with breath that stirred the water below. Lycaon approached without fear. You feel it, don't you? Lycaon said softly. The world stirs again. Morvith-Kell's eyes did not open, but the chains creaked. I was wrong to be sealed, Lycaon continued, but not wrong to exist. He rested one massive claw against the stone. They think I need you awakened to rule, he said. They misunderstand. The chains pulsed brighter. You are not my weapon, Lycaon murmured. You are my threat. A slow smile spread across his monstrous face. And threats must remain asleep. Back above ground, the factions fractured. Not violently, but ideologically. Some wolves began drifting away from Rashad's banners, drawn by instinct, by dreams they didn't remember having before. Vampires argued among themselves. Ancient covens split between those who favored resistance and those who whispered about alliance. The wardens argued strategy late into the night, debating evacuation protocols and scorched earth contingencies. Mercer found himself alone more often than not, until Rashad summoned him. The Werewolf King waited at an overlook high above the forest, the moon just beginning to rise behind him. You feel it too, Rashad said without turning. Mercer nodded. Like gravity. Rashad finally faced him. Lycaon's authority is absolute among wolves. Except you. Mercer frowned. I don't understand why. Rashad's eyes softened. Because you weren't born to it. He placed a heavy hand on Mercer's shoulder. Authority taken is different from authority inherited. Lycaon is the crown. You are something else. A problem, Mercer said. Rashad shook his head. A choice. Mercer swallowed. If the wolves answer him, what happens to you? Rashad smiled faintly. Then I become what I was before a king. Mercer hesitated. And if Lycaon decides I'm a threat? Rashad's grip tightened. Then he will try to break you. The moon crested the ridge, flooding the valley with silver light. Somewhere in the distance, a howl rose, deep, commanding, resonant. Mercer felt his wolf strain again, but this time he did not kneel. He stood, and in that moment, Daniel Mercer understood the true danger. Lycaon didn't need to win the war. He only needed Mercer to choose wrong. Chapter 18: Blood, Moon, and the Space Between. Daniel Mercer dreamed in fragments. Moonlight fractured through shattered memories, steel bars bending beneath his hands, blood dripping onto concrete, the echo of a vampire's voice in a jail cell whispering gratitude. Then the mountains. The war. Lycaon's eyes, ancient, knowing, burning into him as if peeling back layers of his soul one by one. Bound by vampire blood. The words echoed again and again, not as sound but as weight. Mercer woke with a sharp inhale, sitting upright on the narrow cot inside the temporary shelter carved into the mountainside. His heart hammered against his ribs. Sweat soaked his shirt despite the cold air. For a moment, instinct told him to check his hands, half expecting claws. They were human, still. He pressed his palms together, grounding himself. The wolf stirred but did not surge. That alone felt strange. Ever since Lycaon's emergence, the wolf inside him had felt restrained. Not weaker, Watching, Mercer swung his legs over the side of the cot and stood, pacing the length of the small chamber. Stone walls, flickering lantern, the scent of pine, blood, and old magic lingering in the air. Vampire blood, he muttered. It didn't make sense. His transformation had begun with the bite, yes, but werewolves were born or turned by wolves. That was what Rashad had told him, what everyone had told him. So why had Lycaon said it like that? Bound. Mercer leaned against the wall, sliding down until he was sitting on the cold stone floor. Memories surfaced unbidden. Elena's wrist pressed to his mouth during the chaos of the first battle, her blood forced between his lips to keep him alive. The heat of it, the way the wolf had howled in satisfaction and confusion. "You changed something?" Mercer whispered into the dark. "Didn't you?" The mark on his chest pulsed faintly, warmth spreading beneath his skin like an ember refusing to go out. He closed his eyes, and for the first time since Lycaon's return, Mercer allowed himself to think clearly, not as a soldier, not as a bridge between worlds, but as a man trapped between definitions. If I'm bound by vampire blood, what does that make me? Far from the mountains, beneath layers of ancient stone and velvet darkness, Elena Vasquez stood before her court. The Hall of Crimson Accord was silent as a tomb. Hundreds of vampires lined the obsidian tiers, their eyes glowing faintly in the low red light cast by braziers filled with alchemical flame. Elders, enforcers, scholars, assassins. Every major lineage answered the queen's summons. Elena stood alone at the center, no throne, no dais. She did not need one. "My kind," she began, her voice calm but carrying effortlessly to every corner of the hall. "We stand at the edge of an age we believed buried." A ripple of tension passed through the assembly. "Lycaon has returned," she continued, "and with him, truths our ancestors worked tirelessly to erase." A tall vampire stepped forward, Elder Corvin, his silver hair pulled back tightly. "We have faced wolf kings before, Your Majesty." Elena's gaze snapped to him, sharp as a blade. "You have faced pretenders." Silence. She raised her hand. At her gesture, the stone floor at the center of the hall split open, revealing a circular chamber below. A massive tome rose slowly on a platform of blood-red light, its cover bound in something that was very much not leather. Gasps rippled through the court. "The Codex Sanguinis," someone whispered. Elena nodded. "The original, not the copies your houses guard, not the censored fragments." She placed her palm on the book. It opened on its own, pages flipping until they stopped on a symbol that made even the oldest vampires shift uneasily. A crescent moon intersected by a drop of blood. "The prophecy of the blood-bound bridge," Elena said. Murmurs erupted. "That myth was destroyed," Corvin snapped. "Burned by order of my predecessor," Elena finished coldly. "Because it terrified them." She began to read. "When the first Fong wakes and the moon bends knee, a bridge of blood and bone shall rise. Neither crown nor chain shall hold him, for he walks between hunger and howl." The hall grew colder. "The blood-bound bridge shall choose, kingdom united or extinction shared." Elena closed the book. "There is more," she said. "Descriptions, signs." She lifted her gaze. A human-born soul, marked by wolf, sustained by vampire blood, resistant to compulsion from both. A low, fearful hush fell over the court. "You're saying," Corvin began. "I am saying," Elena interrupted, "that Daniel Mercer is not an anomaly." She inhaled slowly. "He is prophecy." The reaction was immediate and violent. "No, he's unstable. A human cannot." Elena's power flared. Not outward, but downward. The hall trembled, and silence snapped into place like a guillotine. "You will listen," she said quietly. "Eliminating him would not prevent what is coming. It would guarantee the worst outcome." She stepped closer to the edge of the chamber. "Lycaon believes Mercer is a rival or a contingency. That means the prophecy has already begun to move." Corvin swallowed. "And what does the prophecy say we must do?" Elena's expression hardened. "It says we must protect him. A beat, even from himself." Back in the mountains, the werewolves gathered under open sky. The moon hung low and full, bathing the clearing in silver light. Wolves stood in human form, wolf form, and the shifting half-state that came with unrest. Hundreds of them. Alphas, scouts, elders, warriors. At the center stood Rashad. The werewolf king looked out over his people, his expression unreadable. The weight on his shoulders was not just authority but inevitability. "You all feel it," Rashad began. "The pull." A chorus of low growls answered him. "Lycaon's call reaches into our blood," Rashad continued. "It promises certainty, unity, power." A massive gray wolf shifted into human form near the front. "Tarek, and you deny us that?" Rashad met his gaze evenly. "I deny submission without choice." Another wolf stepped forward, Nida, eyes fierce. "He is the first king. The source." "Yes," Rashad agreed, "and the source of what nearly wiped us out." That stirred unrest. Rashad raised his voice. "Lycaon ruled in an age where balance meant obedience or death. He does not see us as people. He sees us as extensions." A murmur of agreement rippled through part of the crowd, but not all. An elder wolf, white-haired and stooped, stepped forward. "Our dreams have changed," she said softly. "The moon speaks in his voice." Rashad closed his eyes briefly. "I know." He opened them again, burning with resolve. "Which is why we must decide together." He gestured to the assembled packs. "Follow Lycaon, resist him, or carve a third path." Tarek scoffed. "There is no third path." Rashad's gaze sharpened. "There is." He turned and gestured. Daniel Mercer stepped into the clearing. The reaction was instant. Some wolves snarled. Some stiffened. Others stared with naked curiosity and something like hope. Mercer felt the weight of hundreds of gazes. The wolf inside him surged, recognizing kin, dominance, challenge, all tangled and unresolved. Rashad spoke clearly. "This is Daniel Mercer, human-born, wolf-marked, bound by vampire blood." Gasps, growls. "He stood in Lycaon's presence and did not kneel," Rashad continued. "That alone makes him dangerous." Mercer swallowed. "And necessary," Rashad added. Tarek stepped forward aggressively. "You would put our fate in him?" Rashad shook his head. "No." He looked at Mercer. "I would give him the choice." All eyes turned to Mercer. His pulse roared in his ears. The moonlight felt heavier, pressing into his bones. "I didn't ask for any of this," Mercer said honestly. His voice carried farther than he expected. "I don't want to rule you. I don't want to replace Lycaon." He took a breath. "But I won't kneel to him." The wolf inside him rose, not to dominate, but to stand. "And I won't let him turn you into weapons again." Silence. Then the elder wolf spoke again. "What are you, Daniel Mercer?" Mercer thought of Lycaon's words, of Elena's blood, of the wolf pacing patiently inside him. "I'm not your king," Mercer said. He met Rashad's eyes. "But I might be your shield." The clearing erupted into heated argument. Some wolves howled in approval. Others snarled in protest. Packs argued among themselves, instinct versus reason tearing at old loyalties. Rashad raised his hand. "Enough!" The noise died down. "This council will not end tonight," Rashad said. "But this much is clear." He looked toward the moon. "Lycaon believes the future bends to him." He turned back to his people, and Mercer, "Let us prove him wrong." High above them, clouds slid slowly across the moon. And far beneath the mountain, in the sealed chamber of chains and blood, Lycaon opened his eyes. The game had begun. Chapter 19, Echoes in Blood and Bone. 2 days after Lycaon's return, Daniel Mercer stood alone in his apartment and wondered if home was still the right word for it. The place looked the same, third-floor walk-up, cracked paint near the windows, couch that had seen better decades. But it felt different now, like a shell he'd outgrown. The walls seemed thinner. The city outside felt louder, sharper, as if it were pressing inward, testing him. Mercer stood in the middle of the living room, boots off, badge and service weapon resting on the small kitchen table where he'd deliberately left them. He didn't trust himself to carry either right now. Not with the way his senses kept flaring. not with the way the wolf inside him paced restlessly, unsettled by being back among humans who didn't know what walked beside them every night. He rubbed a hand over his face and exhaled slowly. 2 days. Only 2 days since Lycaon had stood over the battlefield like a god carved from nightmare and moonlight. 2 days since Mercer had felt that ancient presence brush against his mind. Curious, amused, predatory, bound by vampire blood. The words crawled through his thoughts again. Mercer moved to the window and looked out over Colorado Springs. Traffic lights blinked red and green below. Somewhere, laughter drifted up from the street. Life went on. It always did. He closed his eyes. That was when the vision hit. It didn't come like sleep or imagination. It slammed into him, violent, overwhelming, dropping him to one knee as the room dissolved around him. Suddenly, Mercer was no longer in his apartment. He stood in a vast stone hall lit by torches that burned with blue flame. The air smelled of iron and incense. Before him knelt dozens of werewolves in human form, heads bowed, their bodies marked with scars and ritual symbols. At the far end of the hall stood a massive figure, taller than any man, broader than any wolf. A crown of bone and silver rested upon his head. Lycaon, but younger, untouched by chains, untouched by corruption. No, Mercer realized with a jolt. Not Lycaon. The figure turned, eyes glowing amber gold, and looked directly at Mercer. "I am Kael'thar," the Wolf King said, his voice reverberating through stone and marrow alike. "Third king of the clans, son of the moon before blood." Mercer's heart pounded. "Why am I seeing this?" Kael'thar stepped closer. "Because the lie has lasted too long." The hall shifted. Stone melted into night sky. Torches became stars. Mercer stood now in an ancient forest, moonlight spilling through towering trees. Across from Kael'thar stood another figure, tall, elegant, pale as marble. A vampire king. His hair was white, his eyes crimson pools of ancient hunger held in check by iron will. A black crown adorned his head, etched with sigils that pulsed faintly. "I am Alaric Noctir," the vampire said, his voice smooth and cold. "First sovereign of the blood courts." Mercer felt something tighten in his chest. The two kings faced each other, tension thick enough to choke on. "You fed on our dead," Kael'thar growled. "And your kind slaughtered ours in daylight," Alaric replied calmly. "We are even in blood," Kael'thar snarled. "You turned humans against us, painted us as monsters." Alaric's lips curved faintly. "We did no such thing. Humans need no encouragement to fear what they cannot control." The forest around them darkened. Mercer watched as the truth unfolded. Not in words, but in images. He saw the first wars. Vampires ruling cities at night, werewolves guarding the wild places. Balance once, then fear, then greed. He saw Lycaon, young, fierce, brilliant, rising among the wolves, promising unity through dominance. He saw vampires fracture into courts, each seeking leverage, power, survival. Then he saw the betrayal. Alaric standing over Lycaon's broken form, blood staining his hands. Not in triumph, but desperation. "You would have enslaved them all," Alaric said softly. "Wolves, humans, even us." Lycaon laughed through broken teeth. "And you would have starved the world." Chains forged of blood and moonlight wrapped around Lycaon. Not destroyed, bound, imprisoned beneath the earth. "You made him a myth," Mercer whispered. Kael'thar turned to him. "The vampires erased our kings from history. We erased their crimes. Together, we buried the truth." Alaric's gaze found Mercer. Because humans could not be allowed to know that monsters once ruled openly. The vision shifted again. Mercer saw centuries pass in heartbeats. Treaties signed in blood. Truces formed and broken. The rise of hunters, humans who learned fragments of the truth and twisted them into crusades. And through it all, one constant remained. Prophecy. A bridge. A being who was neither king nor subject. Neither predator nor prey. Mercer gasped as the weight of it crashed into him. "That's me," he said hoarsely. Kael'thar nodded. "Not chosen." Alaric added, "Forged." The vision shattered. Mercer slammed back into his apartment, air tearing into his lungs as he collapsed onto the carpet. His heart raced like he'd run miles. His hands shook. The wolf inside him was silent, not dormant, listening. "Jesus Christ," Mercer whispered. The truth burned into him now. The war between vampires and werewolves had never been about survival. It had been about control. And Lycaon had never been the only villain. A sharp knock at the door made Mercer flinch. "Danny," a familiar voice called. "You alive in there?" Mercer dragged himself to his feet, wiped sweat from his brow, and crossed the apartment. When he opened the door, he was met by 3 grinning faces. "Thought we lost you to some mountain monastery," Officer Jake Alvarez said, clapping him on the shoulder. Behind him stood Lena Brooks and Marcus Hill, partners, friends, the closest thing Mercer had left to normal. "Look at you," Lena said, smirking. "Brooding. Again. We're fixing that." Mercer blinked. "Fixing what?" "Your tragic hermit phase," Marcus said. "We're dragging you out. Drinks. Music. Humans behaving badly." Mercer hesitated. The wolf stirred faintly at the thought of crowds, noise, alcohol. "I don't know if that's a good idea," Mercer said carefully. Jake grinned wider. "That's what you said last time. And the time before that. Get your jacket." Against his better judgment, Mercer grabbed his coat. The bar was loud, crowded, and aggressively human. Music pounded through the speakers. Bodies packed the dance floor. The smell of alcohol, sweat, and perfume hit Mercer like a wave. His senses flared instinctively, cataloging heartbeats, emotions, intentions. "Too much," the wolf murmured. Mercer forced himself to breathe. "First round's on me," Lena shouted over the music. They grabbed a booth near the back. Beer arrived. Laughter followed. For a while, just a while, Mercer almost felt normal. Almost. "You've been different," Jake said after a few drinks, leaning in. "Since the attacks. Since the mountains." Mercer shrugged. "Seen too much." Marcus snorted. "That's the job." Mercer didn't answer. As the night wore on, his friends drifted to the dance floor, then to the bar, then into conversations with strangers. Mercer stayed behind, nursing his drink, watching. That was when he felt it. Eyes on him. Not curiosity. Assessment. Mercer scanned the room subtly. 3 men near the back wall. Local toughs, he recognized the type instantly. Predators who hunted in packs, looking for weakness. Their gazes lingered too long. The wolf stirred again. Mercer stood. "Gonna get some air," he muttered to no one in particular. He slipped out the back door into the alley, the cool night air hitting his face like a slap. He breathed deeply, trying to calm the hum beneath his skin. Footsteps echoed behind him. "Hey!" a voice called. "Cop!" Mercer turned slowly. The 3 men from inside stepped into the alley, spreading out casually. One cracked his knuckles. Another smiled without warmth. "Bar's crowded tonight," the leader said. "Figured we'd talk out here." Mercer's jaw tightened. "Go home." The man laughed. "That's not very friendly." Mercer felt it then, the shift. Not a transformation, but a readiness. Muscles tightening. Senses sharpening. "I'm warning you," Mercer said quietly. "Yeah?" The thug sneered. "What are you gonna do?" The wolf smiled. Mercer didn't move. But the alley suddenly felt very small. And very dangerous. The alley felt narrower by the second. Daniel Mercer stood with his back to the brick wall, the chill of it seeping through his coat, while the 3 men spread out in a loose half-circle. They weren't professionals. He could tell that immediately. No discipline in their posture, no coordinated movement. Street muscle, the kind that relied on numbers, surprise, and the assumption that their target would fold. They had no idea what they were standing in front of. "Relax, officer," the leader said, holding up his hands in a mockery of surrender. He was mid-30s, shaved head, heavy jacket despite the mild night. His heartbeat thudded loud in Mercer's ears. Too fast, too eager. "We just want to talk." Mercer exhaled slowly through his nose. "Funny," Mercer said evenly. "Guys who want to talk don't usually corner people in alleys." One of the others snickered. "Cops got jokes." The wolf stirred. Not aggressively. Not yet. They smell wrong, it murmured. Fear mixed with intent. Like prey pretending to be predators. Mercer ignored it. For now. Last chance, Mercer said. Walk away. The leader's smile faded. See, that's the thing. You don't get to tell us what to do anymore. Mercer's brow furrowed slightly. What's that supposed to mean? The third man, tall, wiry, eyes darting, reached into his jacket just enough for Mercer to see the glint of metal. A knife. The city noise seemed to dim, as if the world itself leaned back to watch. There, the wolf said. Now, Mercer moved. He didn't lunge. He didn't snarl. He stepped forward, calm, controlled, and slapped the knife hand aside before the man could even register the motion. The blade clattered against brick. Mercer twisted, driving his elbow into the man's sternum with enough force to drop him gasping to the ground. The other two reacted instantly. Too late. The second thug rushed him, swinging wildly. Mercer caught the punch, felt bone grind beneath his grip, and shoved the man back into a dumpster hard enough to rattle its contents. The metal rang like a bell. The leader froze, eyes widening. What the hell? Mercer looked at him. Really looked. His pupils had dilated, gold bleeding faintly into the edges. His posture had changed, shoulders broader, stance grounded like something carved from instinct rather than learned training. You should have listened, Mercer said. The leader bolted. Mercer hesitated for half a heartbeat. Then the wolf surged. He didn't chase so much as close distance. One moment the man was 10 feet away. The next Mercer's hand closed around the back of his jacket, hauling him off his feet. The leader slammed into the alley wall, breath exploding out of him in a wheeze. Mercer pinned him there with one hand. The man struggled, panic flooding his scent. Let me go. Mercer leaned in, voice low, dangerous. Why me? I don't know what you're talking about. Mercer tightened his grip just enough to let the man feel how little it would take. Someone pointed you at me, Mercer said. Who? The man shook his head frantically. Nobody. Someone said there was a cop drinking alone. Easy target. Lie, the wolf growled. Mercer felt it too. The man's fear spiked, not at Mercer's threat, but at the memory of something else. Try again, Mercer said. Sweat poured down the man's face. Okay. There was a guy, earlier tonight, paid us, said you were trouble. Mercer's pulse quickened. Describe him. The man swallowed. Didn't look like much. Pale. Well-dressed. Didn't blink much. Gave me the creeps. Mercer's stomach sank. Vampire. Or something worse. What did he want? Mercer pressed. The man's voice dropped to a whisper. He said to see what you could do. To push you. Mercer released him. The man collapsed to the ground, scrambling backward like a crab. I swear, that's all I know. Mercer stepped back, chest rising and falling too fast now. The wolf pressed close to the surface, teeth aching, muscles tight with the urge to finish what it had started. End it, the wolf urged. He will bring others. No, Mercer muttered aloud. The man froze. What? Mercer closed his eyes and forced the change back. Forced his heart rate down. Forced his breath into control. Slowly, painfully, the gold faded from his vision. Go, Mercer said, opening his eyes again. And if I ever see you again, you won't walk away. The man didn't wait for clarification. He ran. Mercer stood alone in the alley, hands trembling. That was when he felt it again. Not the wolf. Something colder. He turned. At the far end of the alley, half hidden by shadow and steam rising from a vent, a figure leaned casually against the brick wall. Tall, pale, perfectly still. You handled that better than I expected, the figure said. Mercer's muscles locked. Step into the light, Mercer ordered. The figure smiled and obliged. The man looked human at first glance. Sharp cheekbones, dark hair, eyes like polished onyx. But Mercer's senses screamed wrongness. No heartbeat, no breath, no warmth. Who are you? Mercer demanded. The man inclined his head slightly. Someone who's been watching you for a very long time. Mercer's jaw clenched. You paid those guys. I did, the vampire admitted easily. Crude test, but effective. Mercer felt the wolf stir again, furious now. "You're lucky they walked away." "Oh, I know," the vampire said softly, "which is why I intervened only as an observer." Mercer took a step forward. "You don't get to play games with me." The vampire's smile widened just enough to show the faintest hint of fong. "Neither do you." The air between them crackled. "You're changing faster than expected," the vampire continued. "Lycaon accelerated things." Mercer's blood ran cold. "You know about him. Everyone who matters does," the vampire replied. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Before Mercer could answer, the vampire stepped back into the shadows and vanished. No blur, no wind, just absence. Mercer swore under his breath. The rest of the night passed in a haze. Mercer reunited briefly with his friends, brushed off their concern with practiced ease, and made excuses about an early shift. They didn't press him. Cops learned when not to ask. By the time Mercer reached his apartment, the adrenaline had drained, leaving behind exhaustion and a bone-deep unease. He locked the door, leaned against it, and slid down until he was sitting on the floor. "They're testing me now," he whispered. The wolf did not disagree. Sleep came in fits. When it did, the visions returned. This time, Mercer stood atop a mountain ridge beneath a blood-red moon. Before him knelt werewolves by the hundreds, some snarling, some weeping, some burning with fanatic devotion. At their head stood Lycaon, but Lycaon was not alone. Beside him stood a vampire in regal black armor, Valric, his hand resting possessively on Lycaon's shoulder. "You see," Valric said, his voice echoing like a blade drawn from a sheath. "Even kings can be guided." Lycaon's eyes flicked toward Mercer, and for the first time there was doubt in them. Mercer woke with a gasp. Dawn light crept through the blinds. The city stirred. And somewhere out there, forces older than nations were moving pieces into place. The alley had been a warning. The war was no longer waiting in the mountains. It had followed him home. Chapter 20. Teeth in the dark, eyes on the moon. The vampire did not appear again that night. That fact bothered Daniel Mercer more than if he had. Mercer stood at his kitchen sink as dawn crept fully into the sky, water running over his hands long after they were clean. The city outside woke in layers. Engines, sirens, voices. But beneath it all he could feel the tension tightening like a wire drawn too far. Someone had paid thugs to test him. Someone had watched him nearly lose control. Someone had walked away satisfied. And worse, someone had wanted him to. Mercer shut off the water and braced himself on the counter, staring at his reflection in the dark window. He looked the same, tired eyes, scruff on his jaw. A man in his 30s who should have been worrying about bills and shift schedules, not ancient kings and secret wars. "You're not alone anymore," he muttered. The wolf stirred at that, alert and uneasy. The hunters moved before sunset. They always did. 3 unmarked vehicles rolled into the neighborhood just after 6 p.m., parking at staggered distances. To a normal passerby, they were invisible utility trucks, a contractor van, and aging SUV. To Mercer, they might as well have been painted red. He felt them before he saw them. The air shifted. The city's scent changed. Ozone, cold iron, old prayers soaked into fabric. His skin prickled as if brushed by static. "Hunters," the wolf growled. Mercer closed the blinds slowly and stepped away from the window. His phone buzzed on the counter. "Unknown number. You felt them too. Do not engage. We need to talk." Mercer stared at the message, jaw tightening. "Of course we do," he muttered. He grabbed his jacket, slipped his badge and gun into the inside pocket out of habit, then stopped himself. After a moment's hesitation, he left them behind. This wasn't a cop problem. He slipped out the back stairwell instead of the front and melted into the city just as the sun dipped below the mountains. The meeting place was an abandoned tram station at the edge of old Colorado City. One of those half-forgotten relics the city never quite knew what to do with. Overgrown tracks, broken signage, shadows that stretched too long. Mercer arrived first. He didn't wait long. The vampire emerged from behind a concrete pillar, hands visible, posture relaxed. You came unarmed, the vampire noted. That's either very brave or very foolish. Mercer didn't smile. I'm tired of being tested. The vampire inclined his head. Fair. Start talking, Mercer said. Who are you? The vampire considered him for a moment, then sighed softly. Names have power, especially right now. He stepped closer, stopping just outside Mercer's reach. You may call me Lucian. Mercer filed it away. You paid those thugs. Yes. You brought hunters into my neighborhood. Lucian's expression tightened. No, they were already circling. Your outburst accelerated their timeline. Outburst, Mercer repeated flatly. You restrained yourself, Lucian said. Impressively. Many would not have. Mercer stepped closer, eyes hard. Why test me? Lucian's gaze sharpened. Because Lycaon is not the only ancient force returning to the board. And because Elena Vasquez cannot see everything. That got Mercer's attention. You're playing against her, Mercer said. Lucian shook his head. I am playing for survival. He gestured toward the city. The hunters are not amateurs. They are not zealots with crosses and silver bullets. They are accountants, doctors, judges, officers. Humans who know exactly what stalks their world and believe they are its last defense. Mercer felt a chill crawl up his spine. They know about vampires and werewolves. They have always known, Lucian replied. Just not everything. Lucian's eyes locked onto Mercer's. And now they know about you. The hunters watched from afar. Inside the contractor van, a woman in her 40s adjusted a headset and studied the tablet mounted to the dashboard. Thermal readings, motion trackers, anomalies marked in red. Target is mobile, she said calmly. Behavior consistent with enhanced physiology. A man beside her, broad-shouldered, military posture, grunted. Any confirmation on classification? Hybrid, she replied. Wolf-based, possibly augmented. The man's mouth tightened. Vampire involvement? Likely. He tapped the screen. Notify command. Phase 2 authorization. A quiet voice crackled through the headset. Authorization granted. Observation only. Do not engage unless compromised. The woman smiled thinly. Understood. She looked back at the screen where Mercer's heat signature moved through the city like a slow-burning flare. Let's see what you choose, Officer Mercer, she murmured. Mercer felt the eyes on him as he moved. After leaving Lucian behind, no answers given, only warnings, Mercer made for the mountains. Not the deep territory of the Pax. The neutral ground. Rashad and Elena met him at the old truce site, a stone overlook carved into the mountainside, overlooking the city lights like a bowl of stars. The air there always felt different, heavy with memory. Elena arrived first, her presence like a drop in temperature. You are unraveling, she said calmly. Mercer snorted. Nice to see you too. Rashad emerged from the trees moments later, massive even in human form. His eyes searched Mercer's face, nostrils flaring. You've been hunted, Rashad said. Mercer nodded. Humans. Both leaders stiffened. Elaborate, Elena said. Mercer told them everything. The alley, the vampire test, Lucian's warning, the hunters closing in. By the time he finished, silence hung between them like a held breath. Elena, Rashad said slowly. You told me the hunters were dormant. They were, Elena replied. Or pretending to be. She turned to Mercer. Did Lucian say who commands them? No, Mercer said. But he implied they've been watching longer than we think. Rashad growled softly. They always do. When balance shifts, humans panic. Mercer shook his head. This isn't panic. This is planning. He hesitated, then continued. I'm also having visions, not just dreams. Past kings, vampires and wolves. The truth of the first war. Elena's expression changed just slightly. What did you see? She asked. Mercer met her gaze. I saw a vampire king bind Lycaon. I saw werewolf kings erased from history. I saw lies we both tell to keep humans ignorant. Rashad's jaw tightened. Elena, Mercer said quietly. What aren't you telling me? Elena was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke. The prophecy you are bound to is incomplete, she said. Deliberately. Mercer felt something sink in his gut. Incomplete how? Elena stepped closer, moonlight catching the red in her eyes. It does not end with unity. Rashad stiffened. Elena, she deserves to know. Elena cut in. So does he. She turned back to Mercer. The blood-bound bridge does not simply choose between peace and extinction. She inhaled slowly. It becomes the fulcrum. Mercer frowned. Meaning, Elena said softly, that whichever side claims you wins. The words hit like a blow. Rashad growled. And that is why Lycaon wants him. And why the hunters will try to kill him, Elena added. And why Lucian is testing him. Mercer laughed once, sharp and humorless. Everyone wants a piece of me. Elena's gaze softened. Because you are something no one has controlled before. Rashad placed a hand on Mercer's shoulder, heavy and grounding. You stood before Lycaon and did not kneel. Mercer swallowed. I felt him watching me again last night. Elena nodded. He is learning restraint. That makes him more dangerous. And the hunters? Mercer asked. They will escalate, Elena said. They always do. Surveillance becomes containment. Containment becomes eradication. Mercer looked out over the city, lights flickering like fragile things. I won't let them turn this into another war, he said quietly. Rashad studied him. Even if that means choosing a side? Mercer closed his eyes briefly. No, he said. It means ending the game. Elena's lips curved into something like a smile, sharp, proud, afraid. Then you will need allies who do not fear what you are becoming. Mercer opened his eyes. Then start telling me the rest of the truth. Above them, clouds slid across the moon. And far below, in the city, the hunters adjusted their scope. The pieces were no longer moving in secret. The board was set. The wind picked up along the overlook, carrying the distant hum of the city and the sharper scent of ozone rolling down from the peaks. Daniel Mercer stood between Elena Vasquez and Rashad, feeling, more than seeing, the invisible lines tightening around him. Hunters below, ancient kings above, allies who were also liabilities, and somewhere in the dark, Lucian watching to see which way he would fall. You said the prophecy was incomplete, Mercer said at last, breaking the silence. His voice was steady, but inside him, the wolf shifted restlessly. What happens to me in the versions you erased? Elena didn't answer immediately. She turned her gaze toward the city lights, her expression unreadable. In some tellings, she said slowly, the blood-bound bridge becomes a ruler. In others, a martyr. Mercer felt Rashad's hand tense on his shoulder. And in the worst versions? Mercer pressed. Elena met his eyes. You become the catalyst that ends us all. The words landed heavy. Rashad growled low in his chest. Enough half-truths. If we're doing this, we do it clean. Elena inclined her head slightly. Fair. She turned fully toward Mercer now. The original prophecy does not say you will choose peace or war. It says the world will choose through you. Mercer frowned. That's not a choice. It is, Elena replied. Just not a comfortable one. Rashad finally removed his hand from Mercer's shoulder and stepped forward. Lycaon believes dominance is order. The hunters believe extermination is safety. Vampires believe secrecy is survival. He looked at Mercer. What do you believe? Mercer didn't answer right away. He thought of the alley, the thugs shaking in fear. How easily it would have been to let the wolf finish it. He thought of his friends laughing in the bar, unaware how close they lived to the edge of something ancient and lethal. I believe, Mercer said slowly, that nobody gets to decide the fate of the world without paying the cost themselves. Elena studied him intently. That sounds like defiance. Mercer met her gaze. It's accountability. The mountain trembled faintly. Not an earthquake, but something deeper, older. Rashad's eyes snapped toward the tree line. They're close, he said. The hunters. Elena's expression hardened. Closer than I anticipated. Mercer felt it too now. Pinpricks of awareness brushing his senses. Cold focus. Trained intent. Not fear, not hunger. Purpose. They followed me, Mercer said. And they're not backing off. Rashad bared his teeth slightly. Then we should remove them. No, Mercer said sharply. Both leaders turned toward him. No killing, Mercer continued. Not tonight. If they die, this escalates beyond containment. Elena considered that. You're thinking like a strategist. I'm thinking like a cop, Mercer replied. Hunters with bodies become martyrs. Hunters exposed become liabilities. Rashad's brow furrowed. Expose them how? Mercer exhaled. By letting them see what they're really dealing with, and what happens if they push too hard. The hunters had eyes on the overlook. Through a high-powered scope, the woman in the van, Agent Miriam Hale, watched 3 figures standing against the moonlit stone. Confirm visual, she said calmly. Confirmed, came the response through her headset. Subject Mercer accompanied by 2 high-value anomalies. Hale adjusted the zoom. One figure was massive, posture predatory even at rest. The other radiated something colder, unnatural stillness. Werewolf Alpha and Vampire Queen, Hale murmured. All in one place. Her second-in-command shifted uneasily. Command will want authorization. Hale shook her head. Not yet. She watched Mercer closely. His body language wasn't submissive, nor was it aggressive. It was centered. That one's different, Hale said quietly. Mercer moved first. He stepped away from Elena and Rashad, deliberately exposing himself to the open edge of the overlook. Moonlight washed over him, igniting a faint shimmer beneath his skin. I'm going to draw them out, he said. Rashad's eyes narrowed. You'll be walking into a kill box. Not if they're disciplined, Mercer replied. And you said they were. Elena studied him. You understand they will try to isolate you. Mercer nodded. That's the point. Rashad growled. This is reckless. Mercer looked back at him. So was standing against Lycan. That silenced him. Elena spoke quietly. If they engage. They won't, Mercer said. Not yet. He took another step forward, then another, until he stood alone at the edge, the city sprawling beneath him. He raised his voice, not shouting but projecting. I know you're there, Mercer said into the night. And I know you're listening. The wind carried his words outward. I'm not running, he continued, and I'm not attacking. But if you keep pushing, someone gets hurt, and it won't be me. In the van, Hale's lips pressed into a thin line. He knows, her second-in-command said. Yes, Hale replied, and he wants us to make the next move. She tapped her headset. Command, this is Hale. Recommend continued observation. Subject is attempting communication. Pause. Then, denied. Proceed with Phase 2. Hale's jaw tightened. Phase 2? Her second asked. Pressure, Hale said grimly. Non-lethal containment. She keyed another channel. Teams Alpha and Bravo move in. Slow and visible. I want to see how he reacts. Mercer felt it immediately. Movement in the trees. Boots on stone. The soft mechanical whine of tech activating. They're advancing, Rashad murmured from behind him. Mercer didn't turn. Good. Figures emerged from the darkness. 6 of them, spread wide, weapons lowered but ready. Not guns. Something else. Compact launchers etched with runes. Nets laced with silver filament. Elena hissed softly. Prepared. Mercer raised his hands slowly, palms open. Easy, he called. Nobody needs to bleed. One of the hunters, a man with a scar across his cheek, spoke. Daniel Mercer, you are requested to surrender peacefully for evaluation. Rashad took an involuntary step forward. Mercer lifted a hand slightly behind him, a silent signal to stay put. Surrender to who? Mercer asked. You don't have jurisdiction here. The hunter's eyes flicked briefly toward Elena and Rashad, then back. We have jurisdiction wherever non-human threats emerge. Elena smiled coldly. How quaint. Mercer kept his tone calm. You're scared. I get that. But you don't know what you're poking. The scarred hunter's finger tightened on the trigger. We know enough. That was when Mercer let the wolf breathe. He didn't transform. He didn't grow claws or fangs. He simply opened himself. The pressure rolled outward like a wave. Ancient, layered, carrying echoes of kings and battles long buried. The air thickened. The ground vibrated faintly beneath their feet. The hunters froze. Their instruments spiked. Heart rates jumped. One of them stumbled back, gasping. What is that?" someone whispered. Elena felt it too, and surprise flickered across her features. Rashad's eyes widened. "Mercer!" Mercer spoke softly, but his voice carried with unnatural clarity. "This is what happens when you push too far." He took a step forward. Several hunters instinctively raised their weapons, then hesitated. "You think killing monsters makes you heroes," Mercer continued, "but you don't understand balance. You don't understand restraint." His eyes burned faint gold now. "And you don't understand me." The scarred hunter swallowed. "Stand down," he ordered his team, voice tight. Mercer felt something shift. Not victory, recognition. From somewhere deeper in the trees, Hale watched through her scope, pulse racing. "That's not dominance," she murmured. "That's control." She lowered the scope slowly. "This changes everything." The hunters withdrew, slowly, carefully, without turning their backs. When they vanished into the dark, the mountain seemed to exhale. Mercer sagged slightly, the pressure receding back into him like a tide pulling away from shore. Rashad was at his side instantly, steadying him. "You shouldn't be able to do that," Rashad said quietly. Mercer rubbed his temples. "I didn't know I could." Elena approached, eyes sharp with calculation and something else, unease. "The visions," she said. "They are accelerating your awakening." Mercer looked at her. "Then stop hiding things from me." Elena held his gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded once. "Very well," she said. "But understand this, Daniel Mercer." Her voice dropped, deadly serious. "Once you know the rest, there is no returning to the life you had." Mercer looked back toward the city, where hunters regrouped and ancient plans adjusted. "I think," he said quietly, "that life's already gone." Above them, the moon slipped free of the clouds, shining down on a world edging closer to open war. And far away, deep beneath stone and blood and memory, Lycaon smiled.